Hello, God? This child is hurting me. This child you gave me is hurting me. Hey guys, I'm gonna share my birth story with you all, and if you're anything like me, you are searching high and low all over the internet, YouTube, blogs, Instagram, whatever, Google, to try to prepare for what birth is gonna be like. Because I did that. I was so scared. I was like, how in the world is a baby supposed to come out of this body? Okay, I have a hard time like with the unknown. So I spent a lot of time reading and watching and watching and watching. And what I found out was that my birth experience wasn't even the same as anybody else's. So even though everybody's birth experience is going to be different, and let me tell you, yours is going to be so different from mine probably, I think there's still some things that I can share that I didn't really hear from other moms. So I'm a first-time mom. I gave birth for the first time back in October. It's been 7 months, and I still remember giving birth to my daughter like it was yesterday. In addition, I'm also going to be sharing 5 signs that you are in labor. So let's just go ahead and get started. I had a due date baby, which is very rare. And that's just a whole nother story of something else that I'm not even gonna get into. But it was the day before my due date, October 16th, and my last day of work. And I was sitting at work and I started getting like some contractions. I knew they were contractions because they just felt like cramps. They came and then they went, but they were like 30 minutes apart, and it only lasted for about like 2-3 hours. But I remember texting my husband and I was like, I think I'm about to go into labor. Well, I ended up leaving early because I just was not feeling good that day. And this is one of the first early labor signs that I had, was that you just start to not feel good out of nowhere. I think like the days leading up, I was just so like exhausted, like overwhelmingly exhausted. Like my body just knew, like it was just doing something. And so that was one of the first signs for me. I ended up going home early and my contraction stopped. And I was like, okay, that's cool or whatever. I'm gonna be like, it's my first time. All the nurses and doctors told me that when you're a first-time mom, it's gonna take a really long time. Most of the time you go overdue because due dates are just an estimate. Anywho, the next day I woke up and I went to use the bathroom as usual, nothing crazy. And I noticed that I started to get a little cramp. And I was like, okay, that's cool. And then I noticed I got another one. And I was like, hold on, let me time this. It was like 5:45 a.m., like almost 6 a.m. And I noticed as I was timing my contractions, they kind of just felt like, they felt like period cramps to me. They didn't feel anything, they didn't feel different. But what was significant was that they were coming and then going and then coming and then going. So I timed them and I noticed that they were about 5 to 7 minutes apart. So I wake up my husband and I said, Devon, I think I'm in labor right now, but I don't know. Should I go to work? I almost went into work that day, and I'm so glad that I did not, because I would have had that baby at work, honestly. And so I was like, yeah, I think I'm in labor. I don't know if I should go to work. Should I go? And he was like, no, probably not. Don't go to work, and I'll call out of work too. So he called out of work, and I told my boss, I was like, I think I'm having contractions. I'm not sure. So I'm just going to stay home. And it was supposed to be my last day of work anyways, before I went on maternity leave. So then the doctor's office doesn't open until 8 a.m. So I wanted to wait to call them at 8. And I'm still timing them. We went downstairs. I took a shower. I, changed my outfit. I had my bag packed just in case. And my husband made dinner, and there's actually not dinner, wow, my husband made breakfast, and I'll insert in a clip of me walking around eating my breakfast that morning. Like, looking back at that footage, I'm like, wow, it was very obvious that I was in labor. But for me at the time, I was just so unsure, because all of the nurses and doctors that I talked to just made me feel like I was going to be in overwhelming pain, like if I'm in actual labor. And I kind of just felt like I was having period cramps in the moment. That's how I felt. And Devon was also like, yeah, you seem fine. Anywho, ate breakfast, and then I called the midwife at 8 a.m. right on the dot when the office opened, and I spoke to her on the phone, and I said, I'm having contractions. They are lasting for a minute or less, and it's been more than an hour. It's been 2 hours, and they're less than 5 minutes apart. So I went by the 5-1-1 rule, and if you're pregnant, you probably heard about this. Contractions need to be 5 minutes apart for 1 hour, lasting at least a minute, and that's what I told the midwife. And I remember her saying, you're probably in really early labor, and it doesn't really sound like you're in that much pain. Why don't you just go ahead and get ready for the day, eat some breakfast, take a shower, pack your bag? And I was like, I already did that. And she was like, okay, well, you have an appointment today at 11, right? I was like, yeah, I do. So I already had an appointment that day for my 40-week checkup to get an ultrasound, to get the baby measured and all of that jazz. So she was like, you know, just hang out and just come to your appointment at 11 o'clock. But if you feel like you're in unbearable pain, feel free to come, but you're probably going to be in labor for a really long time. Sorry, my baby just woke up. My baby just woke up. So this is my baby, Gianna. Say hi, Bubs. She just woke up from a nap. Excuse her hair, it's a little wild. And now you're pulling on my hair. Wow, thanks. This is what motherhood is about. Hair pulling. She actually scratched me yesterday, and I was bleeding on my leg. And then she scratched my husband in the ear, and he was bleeding as well. So, I mean, babies are dangerous. You know, unfortunately, there are no returns. So, I don't know who to talk to this about, okay? Hello, God? This child is hurting me. This child you gave me is hurting me. Okay, so let me see if I can continue to tell this labor and delivery story with my child right here. Okay, where was I? Call the midwife. She said, wait till your appointment. So I'm like sitting around, and I'm noticing that the pain is getting a little bit more intense, but still I'm like, I don't feel like I'm dying. They just feel like period cramps, and I've always had really bad period cramps. And if you're someone who has really intense period cramps, I would just say childbirth isn't as bad. I want to say period cramps are kind of almost worse, because at least period cramps, you know, they are continuous. Labor contractions, they come and go. They come and go. I don't know. That could be just true for me. Anywho, we're watching Kevin Hart. My husband thought that I needed to laugh to get through whatever I was going through. And when 10:30 rolled around, I said, we are getting in the car. Okay, we need to get in the car right now. I don't want to be, our doctor's office is 15 minutes away. We should just go right now, because I don't want to waste any time. So we get there, and the nurse calls me back to check like my vitals. Is that what you call it? I don't know. And they're asking me to pee in a cup. They always ask you to pee in a cup when you go and get checked. And I just could not. And this was another sign that I was close to giving birth was at the days leading up, like 2-3 days prior, I could not release my bladder. Like I just felt like I needed to pee so bad, but every time I went to the bathroom, I could not. And I actually thought that I actually thought I had a UTI or something, I don't know. And I also cannot sit down. I cannot sit down on the toilet. I could not sit down in the chairs in the waiting room. I actually stood up in the corner and everyone was staring at me. And that was also another sign that I was in labor, because the baby's head, her head was so low that I couldn't, it was so uncomfortable to sit down. And you know, in pregnancy, your baby's head is gonna be low. You know what I mean? Like, it's gonna be uncomfortable. But when you're in actual labor, like, you literally cannot even sit down. Like, you just can't. I mean, if you're just pregnant and your baby's low, you can sit down and it's just uncomfortable, but you can still do it. No, when you're in labor, the baby's head is so low. For her, I could not. I had to stand up in the corner. People were staring at me, and this lady was trying to talk to me. And she was like, "Are you in labor?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think I am. I'm not sure. You know, who knows?" I go to the back, and the ultrasound tech looks at me, and she's like, "Are you in labor right now?" And I guess she could just tell on my face. I don't know. But I was like, "I think so. I don't know. I'm not sure, actually." And I just remember telling Devon on the way to my doctor's office and being in the waiting room, and I just remember I kept saying to him over and over again, "I better be further along than 4 centimeters. I better be at least 4 centimeters. If I'm not 4 centimeters, I don't even know, like, how I'm gonna, I don't even know. I don't even know what it's gonna be like." Just a side note, I was already dilated 3 centimeters when I was 37 weeks. Could mean something, could mean nothing. Most of the times it means nothing. I had a friend who was already dilated 4 centimeters and she went past 2 and had to get induced. Okay, just a side note. But I was already dilated, so that's why when I was having those contractions, I was like, I better be more than 4 centimeters, or at least 4 centimeters. And I went back. The ultrasound tech was like, "Are you in labor?" And I was like, "I don't know. I think so. I'm not sure. My child is sitting right here." So she was like, "Okay, well, let me call one of the midwives to come in and check you before I give you an ultrasound." So one of the midwives come in and check me. She's so sweet. She was one of my favorites. And she checks me, and the look on her face, her mouth dropped, and she looked at the ultrasound tech, and she looked at me. This is so dramatic. And she was like, "Oh my gosh, Alyssa, you are 8 centimeters, 100% effaced, and at a 0 station. You need to go to the hospital right now. What are you doing here?" And I just looked at Devon and I was like, "I don't know. The nurse earlier told me that I needed to wait, and I don't know." So after that, everything went so quick. She was like, "You need to go to the hospital right now." And the hospital was right across the street from my doctor's office. So then we pull up to the hospital, and everyone's already waiting for me. The nurses, the check-in staff, they asked me if I want a wheelchair, and I was like, "Please, I cannot stand to sit down. Can I please just walk?" And they're like, "Okay, just walk." So then I asked the nurse that's walking me back to our room, I was like, "Is it too late to get an epidural?" And she was like, "Are you sure? Like, you're doing such a great job." And for me, I was always so afraid of the transition phase, which is from 6 centimeters to 10 centimeters, I think. And what I've read and what I've heard and all the videos that I watched, everyone said that's the worst part. You feel like you are out of control. You feel like it's the worst pain of your life. And I was just so afraid. But to know that I was 8 centimeters, I did feel a little bit better. I was like, okay, I've been kind of like further along this whole time, and I actually just, I didn't even know if I was in labor. I thought that I had a long way to go. So then she was like, well, it just depends if you have enough time, and we also have to do your blood work to make sure that you can even get an epidural. And I was like, okay, well, I would just like to get one, please, because I also don't want to feel the ring of fire. Okay, if you can just imagine what that means, you can just imagine what that means. Okay, so we get to the room and people are hooking me up to the IV. Here is a picture. Okay, I am just sitting there out where one of my veins blew. So she had to put the IV in again, and they're asking me a million questions, and I'm kind of just like, sure. Don't even know what I signed away, but I signed probably my life away. The anesthesiologist comes in, and at this point, I'm actually already 9 centimeters. I didn't know it at the time, but right after I got the epidural, the nurse checked me and I was 9 centimeters. Okay. The epidural was the worst and most painful part, and you can even ask my husband. Yeah, I know. You can even ask my husband. He was like, that was the most noise that you made out of pain this whole entire time. I know, Gianna. I know, right? I know you felt that when she like put the epidural in my back. I know you felt that, didn't you? The epidural didn't really work. My legs got numb a little bit, and I remember like my husband rubbing my knee, and it kind of felt a little numb. So I'm still feeling every contraction. They're getting more intense. At this point, I am making a little bit of noise because of the pain I was in, but I think more than anything, I just felt like I could not pee, and it was so uncomfortable. That was like the worst part for me. And they actually put a catheter in and they released my bladder, and oh my gosh, it was just amazing. Okay, I just took another break, so sorry if the view looks a little bit different. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up the story because my child's eating, and when she gets up, she is very, 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 very busy. The midwife that I spoke to earlier on the phone, she's like, this never happens to first-time moms. Like, this rarely happens. So then I'm sitting there like, I try to tell y'all, like, and throughout my whole pregnancy, this may or may not mean anything, but my mom had really fast deliveries. Gave birth within an hour of her water breaking, and was always early, like 4 weeks early, 2 weeks early. And I just thought that maybe like my experience was going to be the same, similar to my mom's. And just because maybe our anatomy is the same, I don't know. But now I know that my labor and delivery experience is the same as my mom, okay? The nurse, the midwife, she was like, next time you have a baby, we need to schedule your birth to be induced because this is just way too quick. And she was kind of joking, but essentially she was saying that the next time around when I have a kid, it's gonna be super duper quick. My water was not broken at this point. Looking back, here's another thing that made me realize I was really close to labor, and this is gonna be TMI, but I was just getting so much watery discharge. I thought that my bag was leaking. My amniotic bag was leaking, and I even got it checked out, and it was not leaking. It was just my body preparing to give birth. So you're gonna see probably lots of like clear discharge, and maybe even, you know, the other kind. And I just got so much of it at the end. I just thought that my water was slowly leaking, but it was not the case. So my water's still intact, and this was actually really important too because I was group strep B positive. So they needed to put antibiotics in my body, um, so that it wouldn't harm the baby when she came out. So usually they want to put like 2 full bags in you, and I think they only put 1 bag in, but it was still okay. I was in the room with Devon, and I just kept saying, like, I just feel like I really need to pee. I just feel like the baby is sitting on my bladder again. And I was like, can you please call the nurse? So he calls the nurse, and I'm like, can you just check like that my catheter is still in, because I just feel like I really have to pee. And she was like, it's still in, you're fine. I think the baby's just coming down. So then the midwife comes and checks me, and she's like, you're 10 centimeters. Let me go ahead and break your water. So she gets a little stick thing. She breaks my water, and there's a huge gush. It feels like what you would imagine it feels like. Just imagine. Immediately afterwards, she was like, okay, well, let's go ahead and push. And I'm like, you want me to push like right now? Like, I didn't mentally prepare. So then I give a push, and she's like, wow, that's a great push. How about you just keep pushing? There was no count to 10. Okay, for this push, you're gonna push for 10 seconds. No, I had a contraction, and she was just like, push, 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 push. And it was so tiring. I think that it was more tiring than painful. It felt like, here's what I describe it. You know when you're at the gym and you're like lifting a heavy weight, and you're like on that last rep, and you're just like, okay, that's what it feels like. That's what it feels like. But there's no one to spot you. You just have to push through. Devon said I pushed, like through like 3 contractions. So it was maybe like 15 minutes. And Gianna came out in one big motion, all at once. So I did have a little tear. I think I had a 1st-degree tear, which wasn't even bad. Like, I don't remember feeling it. I don't remember feeling the ring of fire. And by the way, I don't know how much the epidural worked for me, because afterwards the midwife was the midwife was sewing me, and I felt everything. I was like, ow, ow, ow. And she was like, you can feel that? And I was like, yes. She's like, oh, that epidural must have not did anything for you. So then she had to like numb me, and then she sewed me, and then I was like, yeah, I'm good. So I don't know how much it did for me. I don't know if it was too late by the time I got an epidural, or if it just didn't work for me, or maybe it just took a little bit of the edge off. But I think next time I'm not gonna get an epidural, because it really wasn't even that bad. I mean, we'll see. I say that now, but like, we'll see. So they bring my little precious baby up. I did not cry, because I was just in so much shock that it just happened so quick. I mean, by the time I gave birth, within like an hour and a half, by the time I got to the hospital and when she came out, it just happened so quick. It was so hectic. It was so crazy. That morning I woke up, I did not even imagine giving birth that day. I wasn't even sure that I was in labor. And if it wasn't for that doctor's appointment, I'm like being completely honest, if it wasn't for that doctor's appointment, I may have just like stayed at home, because I didn't really feel like I was, because they were just like, stay home until you feel like you're dying. And I'm like, I don't feel like I'm dying. I'm very grateful, and it was overall a very positive birth experience, and I'm glad, because I was just so anxious and afraid about what it would be like. And I think I really owe it to all the prayer that I would have a safe and quick and easy delivery. I mean, I got that, honestly. And I would do it again. I mean, it's funny, because as soon as like Gianna came out, my husband was like, oh, that wasn't bad. Like, we can do this like a couple more times. And I was like, excuse me? Can I just like, I literally just became not pregnant. Like, why are you talking about me getting pregnant again? I was supposed to talk about the 5 signs that I was like in labor, so I'm just gonna review those. One of them is I had a crazy urge to pee, because the baby was on my bladder and I could not pee. So if you feel like you gotta pee, you can't pee, you either have a UTI or your baby's coming soon. Number 2, you're just so tired, like your body just like is giving out, okay? The days leading up. Number 3, extreme pressure that you can't even sit down. Number 4, the discharge, the watery discharge. That looks like your water broke, but it may be. Just always check. It's better to be like safe than sorry. So if you feel like your water's leaking, please go get checked. And the last one, I didn't mention this, but looking back a couple days prior to giving birth, I felt like I was getting ready to start my period, which is how I felt when I first found out I was pregnant. And then when you're pregnant, you feel fine. But then at the end, I started just getting like these pre-cramps. If you know what I'm talking about, like you get these little pre-cramps and you're like, oh, there it is. Aunt Flo's getting ready to show up. Let me go buy my Temps. I don't know if they were Braxton Hicks or what, but that's what it felt like for me. So hopefully that was helpful. Thank you guys for listening to my labor and delivery experience with this child that I birthed. She's currently 7 months old. Her personality is very similar to my labor and delivery experience. She is very quick to learn. Like, she is already trying to walk and she is 7 months old. Not even 7 months old. She's a few days shy. Well, thank you guys for listening and watching. Please subscribe. Follow me on Instagram if you want to see more of my day-to-day life with Gianna. Please follow me at lyss.patterson. Thank you so much, and see you guys next time. Right, baby? Say bye-bye. She's like more interested in what's happening down here on the floor.